This is late. I mean, way late. But better late than never. The Canterlot wedding impressed the MLP community as a whole, but it wasn't long before its analysts started tearing apart the whole affair. Specifically, Chrysalis and her plans. Some stated that the whole operation made no sense, and that Chrysalis was an idiot who succeeded via blind luck, while others believed that she was an extremely clever tactician and skilled manipulator. Since others have so thoroughly covered why and how the Changeling invasion went down, and inspired me to make this video, I'll link them in the description and annotation to this video, but I'm going to say these 2 points on the invasion. 1. Few plans survive first contact. Even if the Changeling Queen had a sensible plan at the beginning of the op, plenty of things could have gone wrong to throw wrenches in the original plan, especially a plan involving the infiltration and capture of Equestria's most heavily guarded city. These mishaps could have prompted her to improvise to achieve her goals. And 2. If it's stupid but it works, it isn't stupid. Assuming an entire plan was a mess, and Chrysalis gained the upper hand by sheer luck, her actions still gave her complete and utter victory, thus making them the right actions to take. Regardless of sense, Chrysalis had the entire situation in the bag up to this point, where Chrysalis states that Cadence's love giving Shining Armor strength is a ridiculous sentiment. It's easy to take this as definite proof that Chrysalis' brain is as hollow as her legs. After all, didn't the Queen just knock out the most powerful being in Equestria a few minutes ago, using the exact same trick? However, information provided by Thorax and a small amount of headcanery allow us to rationalize the Queen's lack of judgment. The underestimation of Cadence and Shining Armor's power likely stems from a cultural difference. Changelings feed off love to survive, and at the time of the invasion, the only way changelings could acquire love is disguise themselves. Ponies, by contrast, don't need love to survive, and can receive love freely. They don't have to disguise themselves, so they can make long-lasting friendships and have access to nearly inexhaustible amounts of love. These vastly different methods of obtaining and using love could have easily created a great rift in how changelings and ponies see love. Ponies see love as something that is unquantifiable, an infinite wellspring of emotion that lies within each and every individual. The spring is capped at various points, depending on the relationship of the individuals. After all, lovers would exchange far more love than, say, 2 acquaintances or enemies would, but regardless of where that stream is capped, all that love is still there, as ponies believe that even the most grumpy or depressed individuals still have tons of love stored up inside them, waiting to be released with the proper coaxing.
Oh yeah.
To ponies, love is an infinitely renewable resource, in stark contrast to changelings, who see love as a very non-renewable resource. Changelings survive off love, and must scrounge for every bit they can get to stay alive. As a result, changelings at the time saw individuals as walking gas tanks of emotional energy, instead of infinite springs. I believe that changelings can share emotional energy with one another, in the same way cars can siphon fuel. Otherwise, Chrysalis wouldn't have been able to feed her babies. But like cars, they can't produce the fuel or love themselves. This forces them to go out into the world and steal it from ponies via disguises. But, because they for the most part only interact with ponies to gather said love, seriously, I want to see the story behind this guy. They only see ponies as large reservoirs of love. And this is where the major disconnect is. When a changeling deceives a pony into giving them their love, there are 2 ways it can work out. One, where the changeling takes his or her fill and exfiltrates without blowing their cover. The changeling in this scenario gets out unscathed, but has to leave at least some of the pony's love behind, leaving them none the wiser as to just how quickly that reservoir can be refilled. And 2, where the changeling pulls a Chrysalis and holds out for all the love they can get, eventually getting caught in the act. From a changeling's perspective, all the love has been extracted, but in actuality, the spring was just capped due to the betrayal. Either way, the changelings move on to another more ignorant group of ponies, assuming she wasn't captured or killed by the one she duped, and the process begins again. Now changelings are getting wise to just how much love ponies have, especially Thorax and our little friend here, but at the time of the invasion, the changelings hadn't been in Equestria all that long. Chrysalis states that Equestria has more love than any place she had ever encountered, and Thorax mentions an entire changeling kingdom that he hails from. This implies that changelings had only recently arrived in Equestria at the time of the invasion, and hadn't had the time to fully quantify just how deep Equestria's love reserve really goes. So when Chrysalis saw Princess Cadance attempt to give power to Shining Armor through love, it was, at least in Chrysalis's mind, a ridiculous sentiment. In order for it to work, A, ponies would need to be able to transfer emotional energy in the same way changelings do. This is something that up until then had only been seen via the elements of harmony, which Chrysalis forces secured. Otherwise, there's not much evidence to suggest that ponies were able to share emotion on an energetic level. Sure, changelings can sap emotional energy from ponies, but changelings live off the stuff. Their bodies have been built from the ground up to run off love. They come equipped with horns, wings, light bodies, and a built-in shape-shifting spell to give them the ability to emulate all kinds of creatures and live off their emotion for long periods of time. There's little reason to believe that ponies without the elements of harmony could do the same, at least as far as a foreign visitor is concerned. B, assuming they could, from the Queen's perspective mind you, transmit love on an emotional energy level like changelings can, then they both have a significantly limited supply. Emotional energy seems to have a direct link to magical power. Shining Armor was pretty much empty to both, and all Chrysalis claimed she did was take his love for Cadance. Additionally, Cadance wouldn't have been faring much better. Physical energy seems linked to magical energy as well. In episodes like Super Speedy Sire Squeezy 6000 or Ghostbusters, Twilight is physically taxed after completing magic spells on a massive scale. It stands to reason then that without physical strength, it's hard to maintain a high level of magical energy and by extension, emotional energy. Due to her captivity, Cadance was emaciated. She had been imprisoned under the castle with little food or water for at least a few days. A considerable amount of time for all her energy types to diminish as she slowly but surely died from dehydration. Most horses can only last about a week without water, so Twilight probably arrived just in time to spare Cadance the worst of the medical effects. Taking all this into account, Cadance wouldn't have had much energy of any kind to give to Shining Armor. Maybe enough to perk him up a little bit, but not enough to power a shield capable of repelling thousands of changelings. At least, not without killing herself in the process. But of course, we know by watching this episode that ponies can exchange love on an energetic level, and that both Cadance and Shining Armor had unlimited amounts of love, and therefore magic to provide each other. But Chrysalis, due to her perspective as a changeling and a reasonable amount of ignorance, had to learn the hard way. At least, that's my take. But I'll admit, it was pretty late. This vid was going to be perfect, the kind of vid I've worked on for the past few weeks. But instead of getting praise, I expect plenty of malaise, 'cause it was late and the copycat is all they'll see.